And I give the call to the member for Banks.
Well, thank you very much, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. And I rise this evening to speak in favour of the original Social Security Amendment Increased Employment Participation Bill. And I'm very pleased to be able to do so because this bill is about jobs, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. And of course there's nothing more important for families in my electorate and no doubt in electorates right across the country than jobs, because we all in our lives we all learn so much from jobs. We all progress through our careers, and it's really the dignity of work which is such an important aspect of life, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. And it's critical that governments focus on the right policies to create jobs, because what is an economy more than a job creating engine? And that's what economic growth is all about. So in terms of the specifics of this bill, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, there are some terrific initiatives here to assist people who have been unemployed for some time, and these are tremendous initiatives. Of course, the job commitment bonus will provide for young people between the ages of 18 to 30 who have been on New Start or youth allowance for 12 months, financial incentive to stay employed and a reward for staying employed for 12 months, and it's $2,500, which for a young person, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, is a very significant incentive. Now, it's important to note that the person must stay in employment for that 12-month period. So this isn't a simple handout, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. This is about a reward for consistent effort and for consistent application in the workforce. And I think that's a commendable structure for the legislation, because it ensures that we are focusing on those people who really knuckle down, do the hard work and commit to employment for at least 12 months. And in addition, for people who stick at it for another 12 months, being 2 years in total, then there is the opportunity for an additional $4,000, so a total of $6,500 under the job commitment bonus. And again, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, a terrific initiative, something that says to people who have been unemployed for some time, if you make the effort, if you stick at it, if you get a job and if you keep persevering for 2 years, in addition to your salary and all the other benefits that come through work, we will acknowledge that hard work that you have done by providing this additional incentive. So that's a terrific and important initiative. Of course, the other initiative, which is the subject of this bill, is the relocation assistance initiative. And of course, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, for many people, it's not always straightforward to find a job next door. We'd all love to find a job that's just around the corner or down the road, but that isn't always possible. And there are significant costs involved in relocating to another town, or perhaps to a different part of a capital city. And the relocation assistance provided for under this bill again says that should you make that sometimes difficult decision to pull up stumps and relocate for the purpose of a job, that you will receive some assistance from $3,000 all the way up to $9,000 potentially for a family relocating to a regional area. And that's another tremendous initiative. And I think these initiatives, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, really show the resolve of the government in the area of jobs. And as I said before, jobs is at the essence of economic management, because if you don't manage the economy well, you don't create jobs. If you manage the economy well and you create the conditions in which business can prosper, what follows? Jobs. Jobs follow. Government can't create jobs out of thin air. Government can't create jobs through make-work schemes or through central planning, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, although those opposite may disagree. Jobs are created by the industry of private enterprise. They're created when people see an opportunity, often at substantial risk, and say, you know what, let's go for it. Doesn't always work out, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, and there are substantial risks involved, but it is the pursuit of opportunity which is what creates jobs, and that's what we as a government so strongly believe in and support. And it's a very significant contrast, as a matter of fact, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, to the approach of the previous government. Now, the facts on the previous government's record on employment are, of course, manifestly clear. So started with 4.4% unemployment, 2007. Then we travel along till 2013, and of course unemployment's gone up by then to 5.7%. Youth unemployment, when they came to office, 19.6%. 6 years go by, and at the end of those 6 years, youth unemployment is up over 27%. So imagine that increase in human terms, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, from 20% to 27%. That is a very substantial increase. And the total number of people unemployed under Labor increased by 200,000. So 200,000. So when we get this sort of, pious rhetoric from those opposite about jobs and about fighting for jobs and so on, if they were so flash at fighting for jobs, you'd think that might be reflected, perhaps in their 6 years of government. It would be logical if those opposite had the panacea for unemployment problems, that we'd see some evidence of that. That would be logical. But the evidence actually points completely in the opposite direction. And manufacturing, of course, there's been much discussion in this House and in other places in recent times about manufacturing, but we need to be very clear in terms of what happened in the manufacturing sector under Labor. So the champions, so-called champions of manufacturing jobs, the champions of government industry assistance for government, intervening to supposedly save jobs, and we know that they've claimed to have secured jobs in a frankly misleading fashion in the past, but that's their claim. But what actually happened in manufacturing is that 1 in 10 jobs in the entire nation in manufacturing were lost in 6 years. So 6 years. So if you imagine, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, if that rate of decline was to continue, how enormous that is a reduction in the number of jobs in the manufacturing sector. So it's a really quite appalling record, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, and it's something that people need to be reminded of, because, as in all things in life, what matters is results. It doesn't matter so much what you say, what you might excitedly shout out across a parliamentary chamber. What matters is what you actually do. What do you deliver? It's not about flowery expression. It's not about simply professing empathy with people in a particular situation. We all feel for people that have lost jobs, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. The question is, what's the best solution to create more jobs? That's what it's all about. And the government has a very clear agenda to create the economic conditions in which business can create jobs. And that agenda, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, is wide-ranging. One of the really important things, though, I would say, is confidence. Now, confidence, of course, is a hard thing to define. People such as National Australia Bank do measure it, but it is a difficult thing to always define. But confidence is critical, because if you're facing the decision in business of, do I put that extra $500,000 into this project, or whatever the amount may be, large or small, the confidence you have in the future of the economy is critical. If you are worried that the economy is facing a downturn, if you are worried that things are looking on the worse side rather than the better side, you'll tend to hold back. You'll tend to hold back from investment. And that's obviously a problem, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, because then less jobs are created. So getting confidence back in the business sector is so important, and there are so many different ways that this government is working to do that. Now, we know we've got to get rid of the carbon tax, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. We know it is a massive impost on more than 75,000 businesses around Australia. We know it's smashed the aviation industry, with Qantas paying more than $100 million in carbon tax. We know that small businesses all around the nation are struggling under the burden. Clean Bright dry cleaners in Mortdale, in my electorate, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, has suffered very significant costs from the carbon tax, as has been discussed previously in this chamber. So we've got to get rid of the carbon tax, and it is so self-evident, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, that you really do wonder why would anyone oppose such an obvious job-creating measure as getting rid of the carbon tax. And then I guess the answer is, well, the only people that would oppose it would be someone who was foolish enough to bring it in the first place. And that is, of course, what we confront on the other side of the chamber. So we've got to get rid of the carbon tax, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, but there is so much more that we need to do as well. Deregulation is really important, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. The last thing that you want to do in business is spend your time filling out forms. Now, people in business, they've got clients to worry about, they've got product development, they've got marketing, they've got sales, they've got all these matters on their minds every day. And after finishing the day job at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, the last thing that we want to be imposing on small business, and indeed larger business as well, is the need to fill out a whole lot of forms, go through a whole lot of administrative process when those processes don't actually add any substantive value. Now, of course, some regulation is appropriate, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, but there is a vast amount of regulation in this economy which is unnecessary, which is duplicative in nature, and which simply ties people up in knots for no net benefit to the economy. So getting rid of a whole lot of regulation is critical, and obviously the government will have a lot more to say on that in the coming days. Environmental approvals. Now, we had a situation, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, where so many big environmental projects requiring environmental approvals were in logjam. So held up, sitting there, nothing happening, no development, no employment, because the promoters of those projects didn't know whether they were going to be allowed to do them or not. And that is obviously self-evident, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. If you don't have the approval to get on with your project, you can't do it. If you can't get on with your project, you don't hire people to do it. So the Minister for the Environment and the government more generally has approved given environmental approvals in recent months for projects totalling more than $400 billion of investment. Now, that's an extraordinary amount of investment, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, and that is a fantastic way to create jobs, to get these projects up and running. And similarly, one of the parts of the economy where government can most sensibly get involved is infrastructure, because most infrastructure projects require some form of government involvement. And it's great to see the very strong commitment to infrastructure projects right across the nation that we're seeing. The West Connects, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, now you'd be familiar with this project, very important to my electorate of Banks in south-western Sydney. The duplication of the M5 East, which will be occurring as part of that West Connects project, will save at least 20 minutes for someone travelling from Beverly Hills in my electorate to the city. And as anyone who has sat in the M5 East tunnel for minutes, hours, however long it might have been on that particular day, knows, this is a very, very important initiative. And this is important because it goes to productivity. So if you're spending less time stuck in your car, you've got more time to get around, you've got more time to attend, it might be a sales meeting, you have more time to get to work, and that means you get more things done. And it also means you spend more time with your family, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, which is, of course, a very important benefit. So infrastructure, critical, and of course the overarching thing that we must have for economic confidence to get employment growing again is confidence in the administration of the economy, and that means getting the budget under control. The budget under the previous government, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker, was an absolute basket case. We know time and time again they promised that they would get the budget back to surplus. They failed to do so. Things got worse on a consistent basis. And the Australian people look at that and they say, well, hang on, how can we consistently spend more money than we take in? And they know that you can't do that. You can't do that in a household, Mr Acting Deputy Speaker. You can't do that in a business, and you can't do that in government either. So getting the budget back under control will go a long way to getting confidence back in the economy, And confidence helps to build jobs, as do the provisions we discussed this evening. Thank you.